The courtroom is silent as a grave. A giant digital screen displays a flight path ending in a sudden, violent drop. The atmosphere is heavy with the grief of families sitting in the gallery. The clock on the wall of the Washington, D.C. federal court ticked like a countdown. Leo Sterling stood at the window, watching the rain wash against the glass, reflecting the cold, steely expression on his face. He wasn't just a lawyer today. He was the voice of 200 souls who had vanished into the Pacific Ocean 6 months ago. "Captain Sterling," a sharp voice interrupted his thoughts. It was the lead attorney for Aerodynamic Industries, a man whose suit cost more than Leo's first plane. "We understand your emotional connection to the aviation industry, but in this court we deal with data, not ghost stories. The black box clearly shows pilot error." Leo turned slowly, his eyes narrowing. Pilot error is the oldest lie in the book when you don't want to admit your software is broken, Mr. Thorne. But a black box only tells you what happened. It doesn't tell you why it was allowed to happen. To the world, the crash of Flight 802 was a tragedy caused by an exhausted crew. But to Leo Sterling, it was a crime. As a former test pilot, Leo knew the Skyhawk 7 aircraft better than anyone. He had been the one to warn Aerodynamic Industries about the auto trim glitch during its development, a warning that had cost him his wings and his career. The year was 2024. Leo was the lead test pilot for the Skyhawk project. During a simulated high-altitude turn, the plane's nose had suddenly pitched down, fighting against his manual controls. "The sensors are cross-talking. It's a fatal logic loop," Leo had shouted into the cockpit recorder during that test. He had saved the plane that day, but when he filed the report, the CEO of Aerodynamic Industries had called him into a private office. "Leo, we are 2 weeks away from the biggest IPO in aviation history. The Skyhawk is perfect. Your glitch was a one-time sensor anomaly. Sign this and you're a vice president. Refuse and you'll never fly a kite in this country again." Leo hadn't signed. He was fired the next morning. Now, 2 years later, he was standing in a courtroom, staring at that same CEO. Flight 802 had crashed in exactly the same way Leo had predicted. The black box data was being manipulated by the company's tech team to look like the pilots had panicked, but Leo knew the pilots were fighting a machine that had been programmed to kill them. The prosecution calls its first witness, not a person, but a piece of code. He opened his laptop and projected 1,000 lines of encrypted software on the wall. "This is the flight control logic for the Skyhawk 7. Aerodynamic claimed this version was updated before Flight 802 took off, but if you look at line 4092, there is a hidden subroutine, a ghost protocol, that forces the nose down if the speed drops, even if the manual override is engaged." The courtroom erupted. The defense attorney jumped up, screaming about trade secrets and national security, but the judge leaned forward, intrigued. "Captain Sterling," the judge said, "how did you get access to this classified source code?" Leo looked toward the back of the courtroom, where a young woman in a hoodie sat quietly. "I didn't steal it, Your Honor. It was sent to me by someone who couldn't live with the guilt anymore. Someone who realized that a trade secret isn't worth more than a human life." Leo knew this was just the beginning. Aerodynamic Industries was a titan of the industry, and they had more than just lawyers. They had the power to make evidence and people disappear. As he sat down, he felt a vibration in his pocket. A message from an unknown number. "Stop now, Leo. The sky isn't the only place where things fall." Leo is in a dimly lit apartment, surrounded by stacks of flight manuals and blueprints. The tension is palpable as he realizes the magnitude of the conspiracy. The message on Leo's phone wasn't just a threat. It was a confirmation. Aerodynamic Industries was watching him every move. But Leo wasn't the kind of man who backed down when the turbulence hit. If they were coming for him, it meant he was close to the truth, closer than they ever imagined. The next morning, Leo met his secret contact in a crowded metro station. She was a young software engineer named Maya, who had worked on the Skyhawk's autopilot system. "They're scrubbing the servers, Leo," Maya whispered, her eyes darting nervously around the station. "The code you showed in court, they've already replaced it with a patched version in the official archives. If the court sends an independent auditor tomorrow, they won't find the ghost protocol. They'll find a perfectly clean system." Leo felt a cold knot in his stomach. "Then we need the physical evidence, the hardware, the flight control computer from the wreckage of 802. "It's in a high-security hangar at Andrews Air Force Base," Maya said, handing him a small encrypted drive. "But there's something else. The crash wasn't just a glitch. The company knew the sensors were failing months ago. They calculated the cost of a fleet-wide recall versus the cost of potential lawsuits from a crash. They decided it was cheaper to let the planes fly." Leo was stunned. It wasn't an error. It was a cold, mathematical sacrifice of human lives. As he left the station, Leo realized he was being followed. 2 black sedans were weaving through traffic behind his motorcycle. He accelerated, leaning hard into the turns of the DC streets. The chase ended in a narrow alley where Leo was forced to dump his bike and flee on foot. He narrowly escaped, but he knew his apartment was no longer safe. He spent the night in a cheap motel analyzing the data Maya had given him. It was a smoking gun, a leaked internal memo from the CFO. It explicitly stated, recall cost $2.4 billion, estimated settlement for single hull loss $400 million, recommendation, proceed with scheduled deliveries. But Leo needed more. He needed to prove that the company had remotely accessed Flight 802's systems before it went down. The next day in court, the atmosphere was hostile. The defense had brought in a team of world-class experts to discredit Leo's ghost protocol theory. "Captain Sterling is living in a fantasy world," the lead defense attorney sneered. "We invite the court to inspect our servers right now. There is no such code." The judge looked at Leo. "Captain Sterling, the defense has offered a full audit. Do you have anything to counter this?" Leo stood up, his face calm, but his voice projecting like a sonic boom. "A server audit is useless if the server has been cleaned. However, there is one place where the truth cannot be erased: the secondary backup chip inside the flight control computer, currently held at the Air Force Base. I request an immediate subpoena for that hardware." The defense attorney turned pale. He tried to object, claiming national security and proprietary technology. But Leo wasn't finished. "I have testimony from a whistleblower who can prove that Aerodynamic attempted to remotely patch the software while the plane was already in the air, inadvertently triggering the fatal dive." The courtroom erupted. This was no longer just a negligence case. It was an accusation of corporate manslaughter. Just as Leo was about to present Maya as his witness, his phone buzzed. It was a photo. Maya being led into a black car by men in suits. "Your Honor," the defense attorney said with a sinister smile, "it seems Captain Sterling's you-know-who witness is nowhere to be found. Perhaps she realized the gravity of making false accusations against a pillar of American industry." Leo looked at the empty seat in the back of the courtroom. He was alone. His witness was gone, his evidence was being scrubbed, and he was staring down a trillion-dollar empire with nothing but his courage. But as he looked at the families of the victims, he knew he couldn't stop. He had one last card to play, a move so risky it could either win the case or end his life.
The courtroom is in chaos. Leo stands alone. His witness, Maya, has been taken, and the judge is looking for a reason to dismiss the case. The governor and the CEO of Aerodynamic share a triumphant look. "Your Honor," Leo's voice rang out, steady and resonant, silencing the whispers. "The defense believes that by removing a witness, they have removed the truth. But in aviation, we have a saying, the sky never forgets. If you won't allow a server audit, and if my witness is unavailable, then I have no choice but to bring the evidence to you in a way that cannot be ignored." Leo pulled a small, rugged device from his pocket. It was a manual flight data receiver, an older model used in test flights. "This is from my own flight test 2 years ago, the one where I was fired for reporting the glitch. The signature of the Ghost protocol is etched into this hardware. And I have something else." He looked directly at the CEO. "Every Skyhawk 7 has a satellite link that pings the home office every 60 seconds. You claimed you didn't know the plane was in trouble until it hit the water. But the satellite logs show that Aerodynamics headquarters sent 17 emergency patch commands to Flight 802 while it was falling from 30,000 feet. The defense attorney jumped up. "He's bluffing. Those logs are classified." "They were," Leo shouted back, "until 10 minutes ago, when a group of anonymous engineers, men and women who actually built that plane, leaked the decryption keys to every major news outlet in the country. Right now, the world is watching those 17 commands on their screens." The CEO's face turned from arrogant to ghostly pale. The courtroom doors swung open, and Maya Thorne walked in, flanked by 2 federal agents. She hadn't been kidnapped. She had gone into protective custody to secure the final piece of evidence. "Maya Thorne is here, Your Honor," Leo's voice said, his voice filled with a hard-won victory. "And she has the original, unpatched hard drive from the backup flight computer. She swapped it before the company's cleanup crew could get to it." The trial transformed from a civil lawsuit into a criminal execution of a corporate empire. Maya's testimony was devastating. She described the math of death, how the board of directors knowingly traded lives for stock prices. She presented the internal emails where the CEO personally ordered the silencing of Leo Sterling. The final blow came when Leo played a leaked audio recording from the cockpit of Flight 802. It wasn't just the pilot's voices, it was the sound of the computer's synthetic voice, repeatedly saying, "Manual override denied, Ghost protocol active." The verdict was a thunderclap that shook the industry. Aerodynamic Industries was found guilty of multiple counts of corporate manslaughter and conspiracy. The Skyhawk 7 fleet was grounded worldwide. The CEO and 3 board members were handcuffed right there at the defense table. As Leo walked out of the courthouse, the families of the 200 victims stood in 2 lines, creating a path for him. No one spoke. They didn't need to. The silence was no longer heavy with grief. It was light with the weight of justice. "Captain Sterling," a reporter yelled, thrusting a microphone into his face. "You've destroyed the biggest aerospace company in the world. What's next for you?" Leo looked up at the sky where a lone plane was carving a white streak through the blue. "I didn't destroy a company. I just made the sky a little safer for the rest of us." Justice Journals isn't just about the law. It's about the people who refuse to let the powerful rewrite the truth. When the systems we trust are programmed to fail us, it takes one person to stand up and say, "Not on my watch." If you believe that human life is worth more than any corporate profit, hit that subscribe button. Share this story to honor the 200 lives lost and the man who brought them justice. This is Justice Journals. The truth has no ceiling. The court is adjourned.